I thought the quote from Schumpeter was a good starting place. I mean, what I'm very conscious of is any attempt to sort of extrapolate from where we are today about the prospects of anybody in the internet, anybody at any point in the value chain, whether it's my company or the edge providers or anybody else, is a pretty risky and dangerous undertaking. We've really only seen the mobile internet for the best part of 24 months or so. So the idea that we can draw strong conclusions from what we've seen so far, I think, is very risky. I remember 5 years ago in my company, in Vodafone, the strategic issue we were thinking about most was Microsoft's .NET strategy. So I am always very mindful that what you see right in front of you today is not necessarily a guide for the challenges that we will face in the future. And I think the notion that the internet is any kind of stable ecosystem, as the FCC said in its first proposals, that this is something we need to preserve like a sort of architectural or historical building, is just really to misunderstand and misconceive the sort of environment that we're in today. Having said that, if you look at the last 5 years, perhaps not the last 24 months, but the last 5 years or so, I think we can draw a couple of conclusions. The data, surprisingly, the data on the internet is not as extensive in terms of the economic performance of it as you might expect, but we and some others have done a bit of work on this recently. And what you, I think, see there is really two questions. The first question is about where value, economic value, has been distributed in the internet. And that obviously comes in two parts. One about the distribution of value between different companies in the value chain, the debate a bit that Richard wants us to have today. And the other is the distribution of value between the industry as a whole and its consumers. And if you look at the numbers, it's pretty clear that actually the biggest transfer of value has not been from telecoms companies like mine to edge providers or from advertisers to Google. The biggest transfer of value, by several orders of magnitude, has been from the industry as a whole, producers to consumers. And one of the challenges, I think, for everybody on the industry side of the internet is whether that transfer is sustainable and that relationship between the costs of production and the benefits and the prices that consumers face is actually sustainable for anybody in the ecosystem. So I get very queasy when people start talking about telecoms companies should start taxing Google or imposing charges, because my starting point is I'm not sure there's enough revenue within the ecosystem as a whole to fund the activities that we have before us. That's reflected if you look at the market capitalization of major providers in the internet. Those of the leading network companies, the infrastructure companies, over the last 5 years globally have pretty much held flat. Those of the 5 leading edge providers, if I can use Richard's terms, have increased fivefold in that period. So the capital markets also see this shift of value within the internet from network companies towards edge companies. And the reason for that, as Julio Linares, I thought, outlined very clearly this morning, is because we have a misalignment between revenues and costs. It's not a very complicated point to make, but it's an important point to make, which derives from the way that network operators have been pricing access to their assets or the use of their assets over the last 5 years or so. And just some very basic numbers to reveal that. The infrastructure providers spend 75% or so of the capital in the internet as a whole. If you take the internet as an entire ecosystem, about $120 billion a year, something like that. But that part of the internet generates or receives earns 15% of the revenue, so 75% of the capital, 15% of the revenue. We've all heard these numbers before, but the sorts of applications, particularly video applications that drive 75% of the traffic on the internet, in turn generate 8% of the revenue, and in Vodafone's case are generated by 2% of the users. So we have some big misalignment at the moment between costs and revenues, which goes to where the economic value is distributed between the players. What's the way forward on that? Well, I think we heard it this morning. We need to set some new pricing models, both to our retail customers that we've already seen in terms of the move towards tiered pricing and the move towards introducing quality differentiation as a basis really for uncovering people's willingness to pay in a better way than we have done so far. And we need to think about models to wholesale customers at the other side of the market, which are complementary, I underline complementary to the existing peering arrangements that we have, that give our wholesale customers something new and something different and something differentiated above and beyond the existing peering arrangements that they have, whether that is access to billing capabilities, access to advertising platforms, or access to differentiated service delivery. We need to do something complementary. The other and final point I want to make is that I don't think that simply addressing pricing models gets you or gives you the whole answer. The other piece of the internet equation is about the industry structure, and in particular the competitiveness and market structure at different places in the internet. One of the things we're seeing at the moment is that there are parts of the internet value chain which are very prone to single firms gaining first mover advantage and coming to dominate a sector pretty quickly. And if you look at where the very high returns in the internet value chain are being earned today, they're being earned particularly in areas like operating systems, devices, and in some of the upstream markets as well. Now, I'm not suggesting there's a fundamental problem with that. It may well be a transitory feature, which means we're drawing the wrong conclusions from what we see today about the distribution of value. But I am suggesting that it is something that, as we think about particularly the concerns of regulators and antitrust authorities, where we need to be looking all the way along the value chain. And it's possible that part of the solution to this value equation is actually you see greater concentration in, for example, the infrastructure component of the industry, but a need for less concentration in other parts of the value chain. So things will continue to move around, things will continue to change, and it's pretty clear that we understand, I think, the challenges that we have before us. Quite where the journey takes us, no doubt, we'll find out. Thanks.